Hi, fourth graders. I will be teaching your language arts lesson today. And someone asked me yesterday, what's the difference between ELA and CKLA? Because we are always talking about ELA and that you need to do your ELA and your math, right? Okay, so ELA stands for English Language Arts, reading, writing, grammar, spelling, etc. And CKLA is an acronym that stands for Core Knowledge Language Arts. It comes from the program Amplify. Okay, so it's really just a program that we use. CKLA is the program that we use to teach English language arts. Okay, so that is the difference, just in case you did not know. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to share with you a screen. This is going to give you an idea of what we're going to be learning about today. All right, here we go. I'm going to go into the full screen. Today, for English Language Arts, ELA, we're on Lesson 5, The Truth About Paul Revere. So you guys have already heard Chapter 3 from Mrs. Mitchell yesterday, and today we're not going to reread the whole Chapter 3. You are totally welcome to do that on your own if you want to go and look up the reader. You don't have your paper copy, but of course you can use the login information that we gave you, and you can just go and do the online reader, okay, if you want to do that. We're just going to be reading a portion of it. What you are going to need is your activity book, which you all have, your activity book on page 53, okay? So all of you need to be on page 53, and you also need a pencil. All right, my friends, so I went and hopped over to the reader. If you want to join me on your e-reader, you can do that. I am on page 24, and this is called The Night Rider. We are going to be looking at two different writings that both represent the same person, Paul Revere. Many of you have heard about Paul Revere, many of you have heard about Paul Revere, but may not know the actual true story. So this excerpt from chapter 3 is called The Night Rider. I'm going to have you follow along with me. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. The Night Rider, you're going to see a lantern. That has an important part in our story. The Night Rider. One of the men keeping an eye on the British was Paul Revere. He had heard that British soldiers were getting ready to march out to Concord. He knew there were only two ways to get to Concord from Boston. One was to march there on foot. The other was to cross the Charles River in boats and then march the rest of the way. It was not possible to tell which way the British would go until they set out. Revere came up with a clever plan. He told a friend to hang lanterns in the belfry of the North Church in Boston. If the soldiers left Boston on foot, Revere's comrade was to hang one lantern. If they set off in boats, he was to hang two lanterns. On the night of April 18, 1775, Revere's friend ran up to the belfry and hung two lanterns. Then Revere and several other patriots jumped into action. Revere got into a rowboat and rowed across the Charles River, right past a British warship. Once he made it across, he jumped onto a horse and set off along the same road the soldiers would be taking. Paul Revere and other writers, including William Dawes and Samuel Prescott, rode through the night to awaken the sleeping colonists. Remember, the colonists are the people that left. They're the people that left Britain and England. So they are the people that are currently living in the colonies, right? It's not America yet. Eventually it will be. Paul Revere, well known for the popular cry, "The British are coming," never actually spoke these words. So I want to take a second just to underline this. The British are coming. It's true. He actually didn't speak that. And you know what's funny is that these people at the time, the colonists, were still British. Okay, they were still British. So really what they would have said is what he's going to tell us right here, the regulars. He would have said, the regulars are coming out. So kind of interesting. So once again, he is well known for his popular cry, "The British are coming," but never actually spoke those words, let alone yelled them into the darkness. Today, historians believe it is more likely he quietly warned colonists, "The regulars are coming out." Paul Revere never made it to Concord that night, but he did write to Lexington to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock, who were warned by the British and in hiding there. Because of Revere and other writers, people who lived along the road knew the British soldiers were heading toward Concord. Hundreds of Minutemen grabbed their guns and prepared to defend their homeland. Remember, Minutemen are men who are just ready at a moment's notice. They're ready at any minute to fight. Okay, I'm going to zoom out here. All right, here we go. So that was the one page that I wanted to share with you. That's just one representation of Paul Revere. I also want you to look at this picture on page 25. It says, this painting of Paul Revere's ride was created more than 100 years after the night of April 18th, 1775. The scene depicted is not an entirely accurate account of what happened. However, it does convey the tension and drama of the events that took place that night. I want you to take a look at the people. Of course, you know, it's late, middle of the night, and they are sleeping, so probably like, ooh, what's going on? You're going to see him pointing up. This is also, you know, that representation of Paul Revere. And you're going to notice the horse here. And the interesting thing also here is that the horse was not actually his horse. He borrowed it from someone. So it wasn't even his horse, and he wasn't the only person that rode that night. I'm going to hop on over, and I want you to do the same too. So we just read this, but what I want to compare this representation to is the poem right here. This is your poem on page 53, and it's also continued on page 54 in your activity book. So go ahead and grab your activity book to turn here, and I want you to grab your pencil as well. Now, it's really important to notice that this is called, it's a poem, and it's called From Paul Revere's Ride. It's written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and it was written in 1860. So that is quite a while after, like about, 85 years. Yeah, 85 years after the actual ride of Paul Revere. So this was written as a way to inspire American patriotism, to get people loving America. Okay, it was written 85 years after this actual ride of Paul Revere. Now, as you go along with your pencil, I'm going to show you with my digital pencil here. You're going to grab your pencil, and you are going to, excuse me, I'm waiting for my pencil to pop up, and guess what? It's not. There we go. All right, so with your pencil, you're going to look at each stanza. Each stanza, as we know, is like a paragraph, but it's different because it doesn't have the same punctuation as a paragraph would have, and it's really just a group of lines that's represented in poetry. Your job today is to, this is going to be your assignment, to write a summary for each stanza on the side. So summary, what is a summary? A summary is the gist. It is a quick way to write down just the most important parts of what you learned in that stanza, okay? So I want you to keep in mind that you will be writing a stanza summary for each stanza to show me what you know about the poem in your activity book. So pay close attention, because I'll be giving some answers along the way. So let's go ahead and look at the first one. So from Paul Revere's Ride, it starts, "Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year." You're going to notice that it has here, Revere, 5, alive, and year. So that means that's A, B, A. The reason why that is, this is the elements of poetry. It follows the poetic pattern, is here, Revere, both rhyme, and those also rhyme with year, but 5 and alive don't match the others, and so they do rhyme with one another. Okay, they have the same sounds. All right, so we're going to clear that out. That's just more of a review of what you should know already. Now, as you were following along, yeah, he's not talking about his own children. What he's actually talking about here is people in the future, us, the future generations. And when he's saying that it's this from Paul Revere's Ride, it's actually meaning it's an excerpt. It's from his poem, so it's not the entire poem here. All right, I'm going to try to zoom in, but my mouse will not let me. Okay, well, there we go. Woohoo. I'm going to make this a little bigger, and I'm going to go down so you can see. Here we have our next stanza. He said to his friend, "If the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch." So the belfry is kind of like that bell tower, right? Where it's the top of the church. Of the north church tower as a signal light, one if by land and two if by sea, and I on opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. All right, so let's think about what he means. Now he says by land or sea from the town tonight, right? So I'm curious if anyone has an idea of what he means by land or by sea. And then later he says, one if by land and two if by sea. So really what he's referring to here is that Revere's friend was to hang one lantern in the church belfry if the soldiers left Boston, because remember the last thing that happened was the Boston Tea Party. If they left Boston on foot, that means by land, and he was to hang two lanterns in the church belfry if their soldiers left Boston by boat. That means by water across the Charles River. The term sea, right here where it says by land or by sea, the term sea doesn't really represent a sea or an ocean. It actually just represents that they'd be coming by water, which means going across the Charles River. Remember, they're coming from Boston. Okay, so very interesting here. So if you paid attention, you would have an idea of what summary you could write here. And then it also says that he would need to spread the alarm. And that's how they're going to know. They're going to use that lantern, right, in the belfry above the church. Okay. So right here, next stanza. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side. Now gazed on the landscape far and near, then impetuous stamped the earth. So here he's really just talking about where he's saying booted and spurred with heavy stride. When you have spurs, those who are my country kids, you know that with your boots and spurs, it's when you use to kind of give the horse a reminder of, hey, you need to speed up or pay attention, right? And he is wearing his boots and with spurs, and he's impatient. He just wants to get going, and he's feeling nervous. Yeah, if you had an important job like he did that night, you'd be a little bit nervous as well. Then he says he's gazing, he's looking the opposite shore, right? That's across the river. He's patting his horse's side, and now he's gazing on the landscape. And then impetuous stamped the earth. Impetuous means done without thinking, acting in an emotional way. So I wonder what it means by the impetuous stamped the earth. So if I'm stamping, right, my foot is loud, that means he's just getting anxious. He's getting nervous. He's stamping his foot on the ground in an emotional way. Sometimes when we get emotional, or I get emotional, I know I stamp my foot and I get upset. That's kind of how he's feeling. He's feeling pretty nervous about having this big job tonight. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to our last stanza. So here it says, it's where it's going to be ending that midnight ride. And here it says, and turned and tightened his saddle girth, but mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. What could that be? I don't know. He springs to his saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight. A second lamp in the belfry burns. Remember what that second lamp meant. Okay, so here it's saying that he is waiting. He feels like he's waiting, right? He's tightening the saddle. Okay, he's making it really, really tight. He's nervous, he's eager, but he's watching with eager search. So he's keeping his eye out, is what that means. And then it says that right here, it says somber and still, graves on a hill. So that just means it's kind of like this quiet, it's ghost-like. I don't know if you've ever walked through a graveyard, but it's really quiet and creepy, and that's what it's feeling like to him. But then it says, and lo, that means like, whoa, look out. Something happened. Suddenly, right? He looks on the belfry's height, so that tall belfry, and he sees a glimmer of light. And in here, you're going to notice that he lingers and gazes at the belfry to see whether his friend will hang the second lantern. And then it even says right here, the second lamp in the belfry burns. I want you to think back on what that means. So since we just finished the poem and we compared and contrasted right here, or we haven't yet compared and contrasted. We're going to do that in a second. This is the first one we read about, the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, and this is the poem version, okay? Now, how are they similar and how are they different? That's what we call comparing and contrasting. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my text here. So when we compare and contrast, that means that we are seeing how they are similar and different. Now, I want you guys to think how they are different. So what's interesting is the poem says that Paul Revere was waiting on the opposite shore, although in your reader, it states that he had to row across the Charles River. So really, totally different. One says that he was already there, and the other one said that he had to row across versus already there, okay? So kind of different. Okay, how else are they different? The poem mentions Paul Revere as the only writer that night, although the reader states that the other two men, William Dawes and Samuel Prescott, accompanied Paul Revere. The poem implies that Revere rode all the way to Concord, while the reader states that he rode to Lexington to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock, but never made it to Concord. So really, in the poem, he's by himself, so alone, but in the reader, he has two other men. So very interesting, we're finding all these differences. One says he rode all the way to Concord, and the other says that really he didn't make it all the way, okay? Or he didn't. Okay. The next thing I noticed was that there are some things that are both the same, right? The dates are the same. Okay, so both say that it's April 18th, and here it says 75, that just means 1775. So they both have the same dates, and they both were, the purpose of him writing is to warn the colonists of the British attacking. Okay, so here you're going to notice the first three were how they're different. Anytime there's a VS, it means versus, means how they're different, and then the last two are how they are the same. So we're comparing and contrasting here. Kind of interesting. So your job today, since we kind of did that already, your job today is to remember, write a summary for each stanza. Now, pretty easy, and this is why. The first stanza right here, it's pretty short, and in that stanza you're going to notice that it gives you the most important information you're going to need. Listen, my children, meaning future generations. It happened on the 18th of April in 75. So over here you would write with your pencil, Paul Revere was writing at midnight on April 18th in 1775. Okay, that's all you have to really write for that one. And then you're going to do the same thing for each stanza all the way onto the next page. That is your assignment for today, my friends. Thanks for joining, fourth graders. Don't forget to do your assignment, writing your summary on that page 53, okay, in your activity book. And when you are done, I'm going to attach a video that you can watch. It's a fun, if you like Lego, there's going to be a fun Lego video about Paul Revere. And just make sure you do your exit ticket, answer the question on the side, and I will see you later. Bye.